Today I'm going to show you how to get a little bit more photorealism out of Unreal Engine 5. In a past life before learning Cinema 4D and Unreal and all the 3D stuff, I was a videographer and a photographer. And with that experience, I can't really unsee some of the imperfections that you get with real life materials, lenses, lighting, etc. So in today's video, I'm going to show you how I use the Grayscale Gorilla Asset Library to do some look development in Unreal Engine. I do use this workflow a lot in my board game work because it allows me to create different aesthetics to show my clients and hopefully get a decided look before we actually do the hard part of the animating and delivering projects to clients. Now, I will admit that Grayscale Gorilla is a paid service that I do subscribe to, but the reason why I prefer using them a lot of the time is because some of their assets do try and integrate some of those imperfections that you do see with a real camera lens, different lighting gradients for your reflections, etc. And I will add that if you go to the search bar of their app and you type in free, you can go ahead and find a bunch of different free assets that they do provide as well. So it's not just a paid service, they do have some free stuff. But without further ado, why don't we just jump into Unreal and I'll show you how I do some look development in Unreal. Let's go. So we're in Unreal Engine 5, and just to give you a quick summary of what we're working with, we have a little level of a metahuman with a photo backdrop, and I always like taking photo and video inspiration from real life photography and video. So I'm going to be referencing a lot of images and styles from the photographer Daniel Norton, Manny Ortiz, Peter McKitton, and Platon on Instagram, and I do recommend looking into photographic reference when you're trying to set up your lighting. That will just make it so much easier to get something that actually looks good. So with the reference stuff out of the way, if you want to add a metahuman to your own project, you can go to the quickly add to project menu up here, go to Quixel Bridge, and you can find your metahuman tab here. You will need to log into the Unreal Engine Quixel Bridge, but fortunately with Unreal and the bridge, there's all these pre-built assets, and if you don't like any of these metahumans, you can go ahead and go to the metahuman creator and make one yourself. I have my metahumans here. We can see that I even have one for me, but we're going to be using this character right here. I already have it added, so I'm just going to hit the add button, even though I'm not going to hit it because it's already in the project. So we have a little scene here. We have our metahuman with a photo backdrop, and we're going to create these different looks and cycle through different assets to help create these different lighting setups that you can use to help demo some of your client projects. So under this sequences folder here, I have these thumbnails, and we can first note what this general scene looks like. It's pretty simple, but if we go ahead and double click on this first level sequence, which is what we're going to use to create and render our images here, when we double click, our character changes. The pose is different. It actually has something that doesn't look like an A pose. That's because when you take a metahuman and drop it into your level sequencer, it will import the control rigs and the animation tools to help you create the animation that you want. Now, for our purposes, we're just going to be making some stills to demonstrate lighting. Future drags here, I realized I blew over something a little too fast, so I wanted to re-record it. So basically, we have our metahuman here, and they're in this pose when I'm in this level sequence. And a level sequence is basically how we can create our render. But if you go up to the top left-hand corner and navigate to from your selection mode to your animation mode, this will bring us to the animation mode. Nothing's changed right now, but if we select our viewport and select our metahuman and then hit the G key in our keyboard, we can see here that we have this thing called a control rig, and it allows us to basically grab one of these controls, hit the E key to access our rotation gizmo, and basically change the pose of our metahuman. I'm going to be doing a follow-up video on how to handle your control rigs and metahumans and such. We're going to cover the lighting right now, but I just want to make sure that you know that when you hit the G key and you're in the animation mode with a metahuman and you scroll all the way up to the top of this giant layer stack of stuff under the body and the face for our BP metahuman, whatever metahuman name you have. Under this, you'll find your control rig, and if you don't have that, you can go to the plus control rig, find your metahuman control rig, etc. Again, check out my other YouTube video on that, but let's get back to the lighting tutorial. We have our level sequencer here, we have the control rig posed, and the most important thing when it comes to creating a look in Unreal that you want to have cycled across different level sequences is that you need anything you want to have changed in whatever our level is, because we're working in Unreal level, it's kind of like a video game, we need to make sure that it's in the level sequencer. So the reason why that's important is we have this BP Peyton character, and she's in here, but if I go to my content browser and go to the second level sequence, thumbnail 002, we can see that the look has changed. The pose is slightly different, and we have a different lighting setup. We're all in the same level. Now, if I go ahead and look through this camera, we can see that we have a really nice flattering portrait. I'm taking inspiration from that photographer, Daniel Norton, that I mentioned earlier. So to make this work, as I said, the most important thing is anything that you want to have changed, you'll have to bring it into your level sequence. To quickly demonstrate this one more time, we can jump into this level sequence. We have another different, completely different look, all in the same level, recycling different assets in our scene. So to make it super easy, let's go ahead and take this last level sequence that I have here, and we're going to duplicate it, and we'll make a fifth one. Just hit Control D on our keyboard and then hit Enter. So now we have this final new look, and when we double click on it, we have this really cool looking, stylized, really moody shot. And this moody shot is really being driven by a lot of different asset changes and different lighting changes, but it's all within the same level. So to really demonstrate this and nail this home, I'm going to go ahead and take everything out of my level sequence except for the camera and the character. So when I do that, we're back to where the original level started. So if I go ahead and go to my content browser and double click on this GSG1, we're pretty much close to where we were at, the default levels that we set when we were not working in a level sequence, which is going to be kind of back to where we started. Now let's go back to that Unreal version 5 of this thumbnail that we're going to create, and if we want to change this lighting setup, we need to add anything that we want to change. So we're going to go into our outliner in the top right hand corner of our viewport, and we're going to take in all of our lights. Just select the first one, then hold Shift, select the last one, drag this into our level sequence, and now when we have this level sequence open, this will allow us to change any property, but it won't affect any of our other level sequences. So what we're going to do here is we're going to recreate that sort of really moody shot with the window light and the gobo and the background being really dark. To do that, what I'm first going to do is I'm going to take this rectangle and drop it into my level sequence here. Now under our object here, if we hit the plus track here, we can add different properties to our object and basically keyframe it and have it live only within this level sequence. So I'm going to add a static mesh component, and that component that we're looking for is going to be the material. So if we hit the plus track on the static mesh component of the rectangle, we're going to go material slot material 0 switcher. Drop that on, and this is basically saying whatever the default material is, let's just override it when we're using this level sequence, which is GSG thumbnail 005. So from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my Grayscale Gorilla Studio, and I am going to go ahead and find my collections and materials, and I always like paper backdrops for a lot of the photo reference that I get for just studio lighting. So we'll type in paper, and we are going to find something that we like. Let's try this this bark paper. This will give us a lot of texture. So we can go ahead and hit the download asset button. Now I do realize that I don't have the Unreal Engine connected. So what we do have to do is a couple things. First off, we're going to go back to our engine really quick, and in the top right hand corner we need to go to plugins, and we need to make sure that we have Grayscale Connect enabled. So make sure that this is enabled if you are using the Grayscale Gorilla stuff. If you're not, you can still use these techniques, just swap it out with another non-GSG material. But for this tutorial, we're going to use this bark paper. We're going to hit the connect button, and when that plugin is installed and enabled, we should be able to connect, and we can go ahead and hit send asset. And what it's going to do is create a new folder for us in our content browser under Grayscale Gorilla, and that's going to have all of our materials. Now for this project, I have done some testing, so I already have a bunch of other stuff in here, but we're really just looking for bark paper 005. So I'm going to go ahead and take this material instance, and I'm going to click and drag, left click and drag, and hold over the level sequencer here, and then I'm going to drop it over the rectangle material slot here, and now it will swap out. Now what I can do from this point on is I can go ahead and go back to my content browser, double click on my material instance, and let's say I didn't like the scaling of this backdrop. Let's say I thought it was too big or too small. I can just go in and set the tiling on the U and V to a higher number, 4 and 4, and that'll give us a little bit more texture. Now this is obviously more of a pink hue, so you can do this in a couple of ways. Another thing that you can do if you want to change the overall color of this, while we don't have the parameters of color inside our material, what we can do is we can go into the actual textures and find our base color here, and we can find our actual texture object. And very conveniently, in our texture, we can adjust some different properties such as the saturation, the brightness, the hue, etc. So I'll just actually bring the brightness down to, like, let's say 0.5, and I'm going to set the saturation to like 0.2. So it's going to be a lot more grayscale gorilla. I'm feeling a lot better about that, so that will be our background there. So we can go ahead and close our texture here, and we have our material swapped. Now I want to adjust the lighting. Now there's a couple ways to do this. First off, let's go ahead and go to our sequencer, and we need to find our light BG. Now, the light BG is a spotlight, and that's very important for what I'm about to show you next. If we go to our top left-hand corner, we're going to switch to our selection mode, and we're going to have this Place Actors panel here. And if you don't have this, you're going to go to the Quickly Add to Projects menu, and then there's the Place Actors panel. You can just click this, and it'll add this menu. Now, when you go to the Place Actors panel, and click on lights, you're going to see that you have all these different lights. We're going to be using a spotlight. Now, if I go ahead and select this icon, the keyboard shortcut is going to be Shift-C, we can go ahead and leave our camera, hold right-click, and WASD to fly around, and you can mouse wheel backwards and forwards, and you can increase or decrease the speed of your camera view. I'm going to go ahead and hit the G key on my keyboard, and that will reveal all of the game gadgets and gizmos to help me adjust any property in my scene and just move things around. So I can go ahead and move this light, I can go ahead and move this light, etc. Now, because all these lights are connected to my level sequencer, any change that I make will be adjusted to just this level sequence. So I'm going to go to my fill light, my key light, and my rim light, and I'm going to set the intensity to 0. I don't want to work with those right now because I really just want to focus on that gobo effect, that like really intense, moody light look as if we're getting light coming from a window. To do that, I'm going to first go ahead and reset the light color to something a little bit more natural, like white. So just hit the little back arrow for the color right there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down to this light function menu. Now, we're going to go back to the Grayscale Gorilla tab here, and if you go to your textures, you're going to find a bunch of different texture options. We're going to find the windows, plants, and lines. Whatever you want to use for this tutorial, I'm going to go ahead and use the windows, and I'm going to find, let's use blinds 14. So I'm going to select this, hit the download asset button. It's going to download, and it's going to give us a path to find. So I'm going to hit on copy path. And once I copy that path, I'm going to go to my file explorer here, and in the search bar, I'm going to go ahead and paste the value, but don't hit enter just yet, and we're going to backspace until we delete everything up until the first backslash. And that's important because we're going to go ahead and find the root folder of this asset. Now from here, I can go ahead and find this blinds JPEG, which is 4096 by 4096 texture, and we're going to bring this into my project. Now I'm going to go to my content browser, and in my content browser, I'm going to go to my Grayscale Gorilla root folder. I'll just make a new folder and make this a little bit more organized. We'll call this GoBos _ text. And I'm going to go ahead and take this object that I just dragged from my other monitor and drop it into the GoBos text folder there. Now I'm going to go back to the root and just clean some of this stuff up really quick. Take all those guys, move it there. So now I have this GoBos text folder, and what I'm going to do is right click in the empty space of my GoBos folder, and I'm going to go ahead and make a material. And we'll call this material GSG underscore GoBo, GoBo, like that. And then hit Control Shift S to save that. And we're going to go ahead and double click on that material. Going to bring up our material window here, and we're going to take this blinds texture, click and drag, and put it in the empty space of our node graph. Now, with this node graph, what we're going to do is take the RGB and pipe this into the emissive color. So we have access to all these different node inputs, but we don't need these. Instead, we're going to make sure we select our material itself. And then under the material domain, we're going to set the surface, the material domain from surface to light function. And now we only have access to that emissive color. And basically this is acting like a mask for our lights. Now to add a little bit extra proceduralism, because motion designers love their proceduralism, we're going to right click on our texture sample here, and we're going to set this to convert to parameter. And we'll call this GoBo text, like so. Now we can go ahead and hit apply and save this and then close it. So now we have this material. Now before we do anything else, I want to do one more thing, and let's make it more procedural than ever. We can right click on our GSG Gobo and set a material instance. So we'll click on create material instance of this material, and we'll hit the home button, and we'll just call it MI for material instance, MI underscore GSG Gobo instance. There we go. Cool. So now under this light BG, while it is called the BG, we're using it to drive our Gobo. We're going to take this material instance and drop it into the light function there. And now when we do that, we can see that our shadow of our scene changes substantially, which is exactly what we wanted. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my sequencer, and I'm going to go to my light BG. And what I notice here is under the light BG, I didn't set my material switcher slot, kind of like what we did for the background. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. So I'm going to go ahead and undo this GSG Gobo instance, and now we're back to where we started, where we just have the default light. And now we're going to go to our sequencer, and then under the light component, and we're going to go ahead and find a light function material right here. We're going to make sure we set this in our level sequencer. So now we can go ahead and under this little drop down menu, we can go ahead and search for our asset. We'll type in MI underscore GSG Gobo, and we can find that right there, and now that's going to swap it out. And the reason why we do that is if we swap to any of the other shots that we did, it won't keep that light function. It stays within this 5th version of our thumbnail that we're making. So I can just quickly demonstrate that really quick. Let's go in and find this other look, and that look has stayed intact. But if we jump back into number 5, we have our little Gobo look. Now obviously we need to adjust our lighting so it's actually affecting our character, so let's do that now. I'm going to go ahead and select my light BG object here, and make sure that under the light BG I click on the plus track and we add a transform property. And this will allow us to make sure that any of the changes we make are staying within this level sequence. And then under the light BG, under our details panel, we'll scroll up, mouse wheel forward, and we can just bring the Z value just a little bit higher until we get that light in a spot that we actually think looks pretty photographic and moody and epic and cool. So I'm pretty happy with that. We're just really trying to focus on that character's eye, and yeah, that looks pretty sweet. From here, what we can do is we can start adjusting our lights to give it a little bit more balance with our shot. So this is just as simple as going into our light and then just increasing the intensity. Now from here, we also have a couple other lights in our scene to help create more dimension and depth with our shadows. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my fill light right here. And if I scroll up in my level sequencer, leave my camera by selecting this icon, and I hit the G key, we can see where this light is. And our fill light is really tiny and down here. Now I obviously want to make it a little bit bigger, so what I'm going to do is find my fill under this sequencer and then go to light component, and I'm going to go ahead and choose my source width and my source height, like that. And then I'm going to bring this to like a value of, let's say, 30, and 30. Now these values are technically in centimeters in Unreal, so we are just gonna go ahead and make it not so big that it's gonna be like a really fake light source, and just kind of position it there for now, and then the intensity is set to 0. But if we set this to like 0.2, 0.3, it's going to add a little bit extra fill. If I hit the G key on the keyboard, we can see what that light is actually doing, and just turn that on and off, and that's giving me a little extra fill on that side. It's actually a little intense for my eyes, so I'll set this to like 0.1, so it's really subtle, but it can really help create that dimension with that shot. Now, what I wish is that our background also had a little extra bit of that gobo texture on it. So we can do this in a couple of ways. The first thing to do is we can actually leave our camera and we can bring our light down. So if I hit the G key to bring up our gizmo and right click to move around, we can see that the spotlight is camera right and it's slightly higher, but if I want to bring this gobo texture and have it hit a little bit more of the wall, I can do this in a couple of ways. I can either move the light, fortunately because we're not actually dealing with the sunlight, I can just move the light. I can also increase my cone radius, and it's almost as if I'm making the window bigger, and that might not be possible in real life, but in 3D it's awesome. We can do all these cool things. And then we can also change our inner cone length, and that will also adjust the outer cone length if they end up matching. So if I hit the Shift-C key with my viewport selected, we can see where that light is affecting. Now obviously we lost that light over the character's eye, so I'm going to go ahead and bring this down and find a spot in which I can get a bit of both. Now what you'll see here is that this light has two axes. The axis for the world, if you hit the Control-tilde key on your keyboard, you can swap between the world axis, which is going to be relative to the world's orientation in Unreal, kind of like where the video game world is based. Or if you hit the Control-tilde key, you can go to the local axis. And now we can bring this light relative to the local axis. And if you hit the E key, you'll cycle to your rotate tool. And then if you hit the R key, your scale, that doesn't do anything, but your W key does give you access to the transform gizmo here. So I'm just going to go ahead and put this in a spot that I think looks good. But what I will do to make this a little bit easier is I will click on the 3 hamburger lines up here and then go to my layouts and set this to 2 panes. And this will give me a second view, and in the left view here, I will select my perspective menu and set my camera to look through to be the camera 001, and then make sure that we have our toggle camera view selected. And now in this right viewport, I can go ahead and look. Now, fortunately with this other second view, we can click on the left view, hit the G key to hide our gizmos and such. It may freak out just a little bit, but don't worry, when it renders it will look actually normal. We're just using this for reference, so we'll hold right click and move around and kind of position this light into a spot that looks good for my taste. And maybe we will just Control-tilde to find that spot. Maybe we'll go up a little higher. Maybe we'll bring this close. It doesn't look that bad actually. Yeah, there we go. That's kind of what I'm looking for. I can go ahead and bring the brightness up of this shot, and I'd say that looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to my single view right up here, and then I will hit Shift-C, and we can see that we have this look that we created in our scene. Now I want to show you one more different way to approach a look in Unreal Engine 5. So we're going to go back to our content browser, and we'll take this level sequence that we just made, and we'll hit Control-D and duplicate this. We'll have a new version, and when we double click on it, we can see here that now we're in this same look. We copied all those same changes from the previous shot, but now we can change it within this level sequence and it won't affect all the other ones. Now for this new look I want to show, we're going to go ahead and go back to the Grayscale Gorilla browser, and we're going to take these blinds right here, and I think this will add a lot of texture to our background. So we'll hit the download button right here, and it's going to find this asset, and we can click on send asset. So now if I go to my Grayscale Gorilla, it will see, hey look, we just imported something. What is that? Well, I'll go to my content browser, go to my Grayscale Gorilla, and we can see that I have this new folder called models. And if I double click on this, we can see that we have some curtains. And if we go ahead and click and drag, we can drop that into our scene and hold right click, and now we have some curtains in our shot, which I think would be cool for a little different style background. So we can go ahead and take this curtain, rotate it on the Z-axis until we are in a nice angle, and just zero it out on the X until it is directly behind our character. Now I'm going to go ahead and hit the Shift-C key to look through my camera, and now we have this object in our background that's giving us a completely different, more textured look. Let's say I want to make this a little bit more high key, as if we're taking a photo against this backdrop. First thing we need is some materials, so I'm going to go ahead and go into my Grayscale Gorilla asset, find a material that I like. Let's go ahead and find some fabric that would probably match this curtain sort of thing. Let's see. Let's go ahead and take this felt dark blue. I think this could probably work, so we'll hit the download button and we will go ahead and apply this to our curtain model. So once it's downloaded, I can go ahead and hit send asset, and it sends directly to Unreal, and we have our felt dark blue right here, and we can go ahead and go to our sequencer and make sure that we add our curtain to our level sequence, and we will then go to our curtain, add a plus track, static mesh component, and under the static mesh component we'll add a material switcher. So right now we are currently working with the world grid material, which is just the default Unreal material, but instead we'll go to our material slot here, and under the none we'll type in felt, and we will find that felt material like so. But we'll make sure we select the material instance. That's important because that's where you're going to get a lot of the tiling options for your material if you need it. So now we have that object, and what I want to do is make this look a little bit more high key, and high key is just a little bit more bright, less moody. So first off, what we're going to do is go to our light, our key light, and I'm going to go ahead and set this location data to be at absolute 0. So I'll first go to my plus track of my light key and set the transform, and then once the transform is in my level sequencer, I will reset my value on the location and the rotation, and then I will scroll up, leave my camera, hit the G key, and I will bring this light up just a little bit, set the intensity to like 5, and then I will just hit the E key to rotate. You might need to double click on your asset, and then just bring this up so it's a little bit more like top down. Not so top down that's going to give us some raccoon eyes, but just enough to give us something a little bit nicer. And I'd say that looks pretty flattering. Let's go ahead and hit the G key to get our little gaming gizmos out of the way, and now we have a completely separate look that is very different from what we had previously. And if we go to the curtain and select the Y value here, we can bring it just a little bit closer, and maybe what I'll do is go into my light background here, and I will set the gobo to be like a value of 5 instead, maybe 15, 10. So it's a little bit softer, a little bit more pleasing to look at, versus if we go to our content browser, go to our sequences, go to our thumbnails, and then we can go ahead and hit Control-Shift-S to save our project first. We can see here that we have the new render that we just made, the new look, but if we go into version 5, it's going to obey all those properties. Now we did add this curtain, and it's going to be in all of our renders because we have not added it to the other level sequences, but very conveniently we can go into our curtain, drag this into our level sequencer, and then under this object we can go to the plus track, and then go to actor hidden in game. We can just turn that off. So now we don't have that. And then if we go back to our content browser, let's go ahead and look at our version 2, which is going to be a lot more high key. Same thing, we're going to go ahead and take our curtain, drop it in, set the actor hidden to off, and then look through our camera, and now we have a completely different look, all within the same scene in Unreal, using level sequences and references in our scene and our project file to help create all the different looks for lighting, texturing, etc. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you learned something, let me know in the comment section down below. Questions, comments, concerns, whatever else, comment section is down there for that as well. And if you want to check out Grayscale Gorilla and all of their stuff, you can find links in the description down below. Again, I will admit that they are a paid service that I do subscribe to, but I like using some of their stuff because their library is pretty quick. Actually, it's very quick, and a lot of their assets that they provide are generally grounded in some sort of realistic asset. So I found that it gives, for me in my work, some of those little extra hints and details that I think stand out from just using a standard light in Unreal. Okay, that's it. Thank you again, and as always, eat 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight to make some gains. Goodbye, my friends. Bye.